What? You're saying? I thought we already learned the past tense. Hola, muchachos. Señor G here. Well, you're right, we did. But when we talked about the preterite tense, we also said that there were other ways to speak in the past. We use the preterite tense when we're talking about things in the past, and we also use the imperfect tense when we're talking about things in the past. What's the difference? Well, let's look at these two concepts side by side in the same sentence in English. Whenever we're learning a new tense, there's two things we'd like to know. One is the meaning. Why was one part of that sentence in the preterite? We've already learned that. What was the other part that made it the imperfect? The second thing we'd like to know is how to conjugate. What is the formula? What are the endings that we use when we are conjugating? We'll learn the first part first. We saw this model when we were first learning about the preterite tense, so let's remind ourselves when we use the preterite. We use the preterite tense so long as we're talking about when an action began, or when an action ended, or when we're narrating an action from beginning to end. In short, we can think to ourselves, one and done. So we can say, Maria ate pizza last Friday. She ate it and now it's gone. Juana and Carlos smiled at the pretty girl just now. They smiled and went on their way. And finally, Alicia and I arrived late for the party. We got there. We didn't leave and come back and leave and come back. We arrived late and that was it. Here's our model for another way of talking in the past, the imperfect tense. This time we're talking about neither the beginning nor the end of an event. We may be describing a situation in past time, or we may be talking about the continuance of an event. This time think incomplete. Let's review our preterite and imperfect models side by side. As we just said, in the imperfect, we express neither the beginning nor the end of the event, whereas in the preterite, we can narrate the complete event from beginning to end. Also, in the preterite, we can just talk about when an action began or when an action ended, as opposed to the imperfect, where we're talking about the continuance of an event, no matter when it started. And we also can describe a situation in past time. When we're talking about the preterite, we think one and done, and in the imperfect, we think it's incomplete. We'll explore that imperfect model a little bit deeper in a few moments. First, let's compare the preterite and imperfect side by side in English. Maria ate pizza last Friday. Now it's gone. In the imperfect, we would say Maria often ate pizza on Friday. We're not talking about a specific Friday. We don't know which Fridays we're talking about. Juan and Carlos smiled at the pretty girl just now. They did it, and they're on their way, as opposed to Juan and Carlos always smiled at the pretty girls. We're not talking about a particular time. Finally, Alicia and I arrived late for the party. In the imperfect, we might say, Alicia and I frequently arrive late for parties. We're not talking about a particular party. We could be talking about over a period of months or years, but it's something that's definitely not definite. You can be pretty sure you're using the imperfect tense when you see words below like frequently or usually or always or sometimes or from time to time. They aren't very definite, as opposed to when you say something like last Friday or yesterday at 3:30. That's more definite. In those cases, you use the preterite tense. Okay, but what you really want to know is the formula for the conjugation in the imperfect tense. It really makes homework go a lot faster and easier, doesn't it? Notice that the conjugation for AR verbs like hablar, we have the same conjugation in both the first person singular and third person singular. So you'd have yo hablaba or ella usted hablaba. And we have only one accent mark, and that's in the first person plural, hablábamos. ER and IR verbs have the same conjugation. Notice that each one has an accent mark, and once again, the first person singular and third person singular are the same. So, for instance, yo comía or ella usted comía. Let's look at the conjugation for another common AR verb, tocar. First thing we do, right, we drop the infinitive ending, and here we go. And ella usted tocaba, that's the same as the yo form. Nosotros tocábamos has the accent mark in it. And there you have the conjugation for an AR verb. Let's look at an IR verb, escribir. It's the same as for ER verbs. First thing, we drop the infinitive ending, and here we go. Notice the accent mark on all of these. Once again, the third person singular, ella usted, is the same as the yo form. As you saw, each one had the accent mark. Let's look at the imperfect conjugations of some other verbs. We have an AR, an ER, and an IR verb. And check out the conjugations of these verbs. Notice the little diablo. You know what that means. These are irregular. So that's the bad news. The good news is we use these verbs all the time, and the better news is you're really not going to find any other irregulars in the imperfect tense. Let's look at some examples with verbs we've looked at so far. In the preterite, we say, Mary ate the pizza last Friday. In the imperfect, we might say, on Fridays, Maria ate the pizza. She always ate the pizza, or she would eat pizza. In the preterite, we say, Juan and Carlos smiled at the pretty girl. In the imperfect, we'd say, they always smiled at the pretty girls. Not a specific time, just always. And then we have, in the preterite, Alicia and I arrived late for the party. And in the imperfect, we would say, frequently we would arrive late. Here's some more of those verbs in the imperfect tense that we were just looking at. First one, every once in a while we would play the guitar. I wrote to my mother every day, or I would write to my mother every day. Each year they ran in the Boston Marathon, or each year they would run in the Boston Marathon. You guys would always read the Dr. Seuss books. And in that time or in that age, you lived in Acapulco, didn't you? In each sentence here, we have two verbs conjugated in the imperfect. One of them is one of the irregulars we just learned about, and the other verb would be a regular one. So in the first one, it was a fabulous day and the sun was shining. Next one, every week we went or we would go to the beach and we played or would play frisbee in the sea. Last one, Lucinda would see Robert several times and would dance with him. Let's expand our model for using the imperfect tense a little bit more and say that we'll use the imperfect when we're talking about a continuous action, when we mean something used to or something would be, and if something happened in the past regularly or repeatedly. For instance, we have the team played basketball in the afternoons, or the team would play basketball in the afternoons. When I was young, I would travel to the mountains. And finally, ellos or they ate hamburgers every day, or they would eat hamburgers every day. We'll also use the imperfect tense when we're describing people or things. The girls were tall and they had blue eyes. Notice that's not one and done. They continued to be tall and they had blue eyes. Adolfo was 14 years old. He persisted and continued to be 14 years for a while. And finally, the room was clean and comfortable. It just continued to be that. It wasn't a one-shot deal. It was clean and comfortable. We use the imperfect tense when we're talking about time of day in the past. It was 2 o'clock when the bell rang. Notice that we combine both the imperfect and the preterite in this sentence. We use the imperfect tense when we're talking about the physical, mental, or emotional state of somebody. We wanted to see the new dresses. We thought or we planned to go on vacation. And Louisa never ate and she always was or had much hunger. Here's some more sentences combining the imperfect and preterite tenses. We were studying the lesson when the professor entered. Who knows how long we had been studying, but definitely at one point, boom, one and done, the professor entered the room. Here's another one. Juan lied when he was telling his story or his history. He was going on and on and on about his history, but boom, at one point, preterite, he lied. But here's another sentence. While Julia was seated in the auditorium, she was thinking of her boyfriend. In both cases, we are talking the imperfect tense here. Let's look at our original sentence one more time. It has both the imperfect and preterite tense in it. Mientras el señor G corría a la escuela. Corría, that's the imperfect, because we're talking about a continuous action, running to school. And it's indefinite. We don't know at what point when he was running to school, whether it was when he first left his door, he was going down Campbell Street, passing through Voles Park, cutting through the Buick dealership. Somewhere along the way, he definitely was hit by a bus. Chocó con un autobús. Notice I put chocar, to hit with, as opposed to atropellar, got run over. So he was hit by a bus, and that is the preterite tense. If it were to be the imperfect tense, then it would be a continuous action. We would have the bus running over Señor G, backing up, running over him again, backing up again, over and over again, continuously running over Señor G. Since that's not happening, since he only got hit once and it's one and done, that is the preterite tense. There's Señor G again, running and chasing the bus. Is that imperfect or is that the preterite? And if he catches it, will that be the imperfect or the preterite? Do you know? See you next time.